welcome to Dude, Where's My ROI? Today, actually, I will change the title a bit. I would name it Dudette, Where Is My ROI? So I would like to welcome Smitha out here. She's from ANSR and she is also doing quite a bit herself as a, you could say, co-founder. So I would let Smitha introduce herself and explain what exactly is she doing. But just a small introduction to get started, because why I don't want to introduce you is I will definitely screw up. You got like crazy amount of experience when it comes to it. I think more than 16 plus years, I guess, right?
Yeah, so little more than 17, but I think all of us have a lot of experience under our and with something that we all can learn from, and that's how I've always been. So to
Right.
quickly talk about myself, I'm a seasoned marketer and I've led leadership roles over the last about 8 years now,
Nice.
and broadly leading global as well as local regional teams. And my specialization is in the area of go to market, helping you position service lines, products to market, working with influencers, working with media. I do a lot of writing whenever I can. It get overwhelming when I'm not writing for other people. And I also love to go and do my own experiments with social, because we don't come from a generation which is born social, right? So you have to
Right.
adapt social. So I
Right.
try to, and Darwin's principles are always there with me, that if you don't adapt quickly, then you can quickly diminish and perish. So I've
Okay.
always seen what can we do better and with social that will help us. So broadly, that's what I do. I worked with brands like ThoughtWorks in the past, worked with Logica, CSS, Unisys,
Right.
Infosys, to name a few. And currently, I'm with ANSR leading their global marketing. And that's what I do for a living. But I also have two other key projects that I work on. And one is I'm the co founder of this platform called Your Philanthropy Story. And what we do is actually cover people who create change and take that and amplify that to other
Awesome.
people to either inspire them or join them in their movement. So that's one thing. And an offshoot of that, or a sudden significant movement of that, was actually to co-found my NGO, and that's called the Belaku Trust. Belaku in Kannada means light. And
Nice.
the view was, can we then do something with whatever people are doing? And instead of just capturing it, can we actually go back and contribute to something back to society? And so Belaku is invested in working on the areas of STEAM, which is science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics
Right.
in rural parts of India. First project is in near Malballi, which is about 100 odd kilometers from Bangalore. And it's a small hamlet called 8, 10 students. We've got about 106 students of it. So close to about 98% of the students in that village come to our Sunday classes. Sunday classes are complimentary and we do it 2 Sundays a month. And it works with students with hands-on, following the 21st century pedagogy,
Right.
ensuring that we teach them learning by doing. There's a lot of experiments. There is a lot of spoken English and getting them to do a little soft skills and life skill building and all of that. So that's what we do in our classes. And we have a few more campaigns or programs planned from Belaku, which of course has been on hold because of COVID and you
COVID.
can't get
Yeah.
people together. So a couple of them are 100 smiles, 100 kids, 100 smiles, where we're looking to feed 100 children every Sunday. And then there are 500 life skills that we've identified through our volunteer network. And in fact, Belaku's strength is actually its volunteers. And the idea is, can we get a volunteer to come and do work with the children for about 30-45 minutes, and then that's followed by a full nutrition balanced meal for the child. So
Awesome.
you don't just feed the child, but you also feed the mind. That's one. The second
Nice.
is we're looking to do learning expedition with BBMP, which is our municipal corporation, right, for Bangalore. The Paurakramics children, as well as the police constables children, basically looking at public servants and their
Right.
children. And the idea is, can we do a lot of learning by doing or learning by seeing? Interactive education or learning. So if you want to learn about the aquarium, then we can take you to the aquarium, get you to see the fish, and then we can sit down, we can teach the child about fishes, aquarium, and the entire ecosystem around that. And the third is, of course, Gyana Kone, and we're looking to do that between Bangalore and Malvali. It's like a computer in the hole in the wall, and it's built out of sustainable infrastructure. It's
Okay.
powered by renewable energy. And the view is, can we then get access so that we can spirit or we can feed the creative interest in a child and
Right.
get the child to be a lot more interested. and for the adults as well, because everything now is online, right from
Perfect.
your land to tax to everything else. And also about a lot of the messages that come from the government on how to farm and how to live in an ecologically friendly way, the pesticides, what to do as norms, small widgets that help them with farming. So that's the other thing, and that's called Nyanakone. So those are the three programs that we planned. We're waiting for the situation to get a little better so that we can get started.
Perfect. Perfect. I could not have done that. So thanks a lot for doing that. And what stuck with me the most is your introduction. That is the first line. You're a seasoned marketer, right?
Yeah.
So that is something. And actually, from your resume, it's like if I see most of the resumes out there, right? People always start off from somewhere else and then get into marketing somewhere down the line. Someone is done engineering and then they come into marketing. But I see your resume. What I really appreciate is you have stuck to marketing from the start, like right from day one, I guess. You have been junior executive marketing, and then you're built up, you come up the ladder. So, which is, I really appreciate that because I see very few individuals in this area, right? Or at least I am one of the few ones who's getting to speak to someone who is hardcore marketer or a seasoned marketer as you are. So thanks a lot for that. How did this journey start? Like, where did you start and why marketing?
So I did my engineering and I passed out in 2001. And when I
Right.
was writing my papers is when the Twin Towers crashed. So I
Okay.
had an opportunity to go and work for a large firm. And of course, all offers got revoked thanks to the downturn, right? The Y2K trend and all of that. So I passed out in the middle of a lot of that chaos.
Right.
And I figured when I was doing my engineering that my coding skills were far below average. And I think if I was a coder, I think people wouldn't have even touched me with a barge pole. And I'm an engineer, right? And I did electronics and communication. So there is for me. And I was contemplating whether I should go and do masters in electronics in VLSI or in DSP, which is like the common things that
Right.
most electronics folks do. But then I sat down and my father and I would have these frank conversations. And then we sat down and we spoke about it. And my dad said, why don't you make a list of what you think your strengths are? And so
Okay.
we did a 2 by 2 quadrant, basically, your BCG matrix, right? It wasn't called that. He just said, make 4 quadrants, put what your strengths are, put where you think are your areas that you're really weak in or what you need to really work on. It's
Right.
hard for you. Where do you think you can learn your skills over a bit of time and that's your opportunity? And where do you think you're really hopeless? That will be like your SWOT, right? Like that will be like a place that you
Correct.
don't go to at all. I did that and I realized that my ability to communicate, my ability to influence, my ability to have conversations, to build stories were all what really helped me even when I was in my engineering, because these are skills that my professors had found in me and I used to lead a lot of the committees as well.
Okay.
And which is when then he said, so all of this means that there are two areas, one is sales and the other is marketing, and you choose now. And then I did go back and read a little and I figured that marketing is what I want to do. And I went and I sold myself a role in an organization. And I told them that if you're willing to try an engineer who's going to move into an area of marketing, I will do this role free of cost for you for about 6 months. If you think I'm good enough, then you can hire me after that.
Right.
Otherwise, I know I'll cut my losses faster and then I'll figure out what I have to do after that 6 months.
Nice.
6 months were fun. I liked what I did. I was doing case studies, I was doing offhand lead generation, I was writing some mailers, I was writing some website content. I liked what I was doing.
Right.
And I had good mentors too. And that's where my journey started. And there's not been looking back from there. So
Awesome.
that's how I became a marketer. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks to that quadrant we have. One thing which was interesting is sales and marketing, right? These two are always together when we talk also marketing and sales or sales and marketing. And a lot of the current new people who are coming into marketing, they have a very different idea about it. They do not look at sales as such. Like sales is often looked at as a different job, which is a different unit by itself. And marketing is like the cool and trendy profession. So, what can you tell me about marketing and sales for the current generation of people who are getting into it, which people don't know, according to you?
It's a tango. If marketing and sales don't go together, it's like salsa, right? There is one person who's leading and then there is one person who's following. And
Okay.
at times that lead and follower changes. So
Right.
marketing and sales have to be exactly that. If you're marketing things which the sales don't really need you to go and market, your
Right.
campaign is not going to be successful. In the
Right.
same way, if you try and sell something that your marketing team does not believe or does not believe in supporting, again, that doesn't help you either. So, in
Right.
my mind, it needs to be a tango. It needs to have absolute great partnership. You need to have great trust. You need to have openness. You need to have transparency. The handoffs then will be extremely smooth, so
Okay.
that when, say, you're nurturing a prospect, right, or you're nurturing a customer, and
Okay.
when I'm saying nurturing a prospect, you're taking that prospect through various cycles of your lead cycle,
Right.
right? Interest generation to taking them through awareness, trying to figure out if they have a need, and then you nurture that and you hand over.
Right.
If you're not really having that smooth handover, right, or if you don't have absolute trust and transparency, what I've mostly seen is there will be a drop, and that drop means that a person who's on the other side is going to have an extremely, it's not going to be a very pleasant experience for the other person who's being on the other side
Right.
of a
Right.
prospect or a client. Second is, when you're trying to work with a client, marketing will also help you look at other ways in which you can build that same relationship with the client. It could be, for example, say I am working with an account, and account based marketing is a great way to actually help you upsell and cross sell,
Right.
because not only are you going to be making certain connections with, say, the CIO or the CEO or the CXO group, your marketing person and their team are also going to make certain relationships with the different people within that ecosystem. And
Perfect.
they, in turn, might be your neutral voice to whom, if they reach out and if you do a voice of customer survey, might be able to find more information or more elements where you can go back and engage tomorrow, which your sales team may not get because the client may not be open. Second, you'll also be able to figure out if there's a client who always says no to referenceability. When there's a third neutral person who goes back and asks them, can you
Right.
speak at an event? More often than not, they're not going to say no on your face. They will say
Right.
they'll think about it. And if you have the right proposition for them, you will get them to actually do that. So we were working with a very large bank in ThoughtWorks. And as always, the banks are very conservative, right? They're
Right.
not going to be coming back and they're not going to be references. We were building one of their key platforms. And I remember we had this great session. The CIO was extremely happy because the CEO was in the room and he was made to look good and all of that. So at the end of the dinner, I walked up to the CIO and I requested him. I said, see, we have this by invite only CXO event. It has about 80 key CXOs from across the world, and it only has them inside the room. And I want to know if you'll be interested in a fireside chat. You
Okay.
don't have to mention ThoughtWorks, you don't have to mention the work that we do, but instead, let's talk about topics that really matter to you and matter to the bank. And you can even talk about things that aren't very, which are okay to be shared in public, right? Because it's a bank and
Right.
I do understand confidentiality. He thought about it and he said yes, because it's more like, and if I'd gone through my sales team, my answer might have been a large no. So
Obviously.
it's about how do you go tango with your team, when do you can go back, and when do you think you can play that great role that you step back, you let your sales team be there and bask in that warmth, and then where do you step in to actually start building that relationship that you're the other part of the organization that can actually work for you. So I've seen multiple examples of these, and having great relationships also mean that you're able to pick up the phone, you're able to ask for references very quickly, and they're very critical to marketing's role and marketing
Right.
effectiveness if you're actually going to be successful in campaigns.
Right. A very detailed answer, and I think it really helps because, to be honest, like when I came, I come from a very different side of marketing. I come from content creation, and then I have landed into running my agency, and that's how I have come into this space. So my understanding of this came way later than earlier. Like if I would have got this answer, I think 3 4 years back, it would have actually made a difference to me at that point. But I really appreciate you sharing this perspective of the tango. Like someone has to lead, someone has to follow, and that keeps on switching, right?
On the music, it depends on yeah, what's playing at that time in the
Right.
dance. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. When it comes to marketing and the handover to sales, and this particular, and thinking about the ROI of this whole thing, right? this can only happen across a volume of data, or can this also be looked at on individual, like smaller specifics?
Everything needs to be measured. Okay,
Right,
what you do, and that's how I've always run my teams. You can't do an activity and expect that the forces in the universe will conspire and you will get your result. It doesn't work like that. You
right,
have to understand if what you're doing actually makes sense to your target audience, and everything needs to be measured with your target audience. So if you're doing a certain post on LinkedIn and you've done, say, a post for worth of about 15-20 days, you've also been able to go back and do A/B testing. You should be able to then tell these kind of posts garner attention, engagement, and interactivity when compared to these many number of posts which don't get you anything. So which also gives you a trend to say, start thinking and building your content plan based on these kind of posts, because that's what
right,
you're able to engage with your target audience.
right,
So you're able to engage. So even with a small data point, you're able to engage. Two, if you're sending an email campaign, then you figure out how good your database is, what's been your open rate, who have been your top 10%, 15% of your database, have they been able to open your mailer? So
right,
that also gives you the quality of your database. So it's extremely critical, and there's enough free marketing martech tools that are available in the market. I haven't used anything which is open source, but in the past I've used Eloqua and Marketo, and Marketo and Eloqua do a fabulous job. But you can go back and you can look for other tools as well which are available for free. But so which also means you also track. So you track right from, is somebody visiting after I sent that email, did they visit my website, what time did they spend, how much time did they spend on a page, what type of content that they've seen, which also gives me pointers to my content strategy. Did they visit my leadership page? So it also tells me if my leadership page needs an update at the end of the day. And also goes back to say, what has been the action? Did they go back to fill a form? If there was any form of any content that I'd put gated. So it gives me like a view of the user journey across my website. So
right.
again, this, you don't need to have too much data, but you need to be tracking it just to
Correct,
ensure that
correct,
you've got everything right. Next is, are you writing content which is exactly in line with what your market wants? So are you then taking your content to media first as bylines, and then are you then publishing your content on the site? So in my mind, I think some of those are really critical. And also to see what are the analytics that are there on your website. I think
right,
that's critical too, because you've got Google Analytics, you can actually integrate that with your website, and then you can track to see volumes and a lot of the other data that I already spoke about in terms of visit time, page time, amount of time that you spent on the page, and all of that. I think all of those are very critical in
right,
my mind as elements to track. Then of course, if you're doing paid campaigns, you want to be, so I'm a firm believer that there's no point in doing a half page ad in any newspaper. If I'm
okay,
looking to hire people, I would prefer to use, and if I'm looking to hire technology people, I will look at specific sites like Stack Overflow. Like, what can I
right,
do with, say, a Glassdoor, for example, or can I look at LinkedIn with certain specifications? If I'm looking at diversity and inclusion, I will look at Facebook and Instagram to be larger platforms, because typically I've seen women who are looking to restart their careers are a little scared to be on LinkedIn, but they will be
right,
effective on Facebook and Instagram. So you go back, and how do you get these insights? You don't get these insights from day one, right? You try a
correct,
few of these, you measure after every 15 days, because the 15 days is enough. But you can't assume that you will go with one set of posts and you will measure this. You
obviously,
have to be doing your A/B testing across everything that you do. And only if you measure, and only if you're able to see what you've been able to deliver, I think only then will you be successful in talking about ROI. So your marketing return on investment will be cost per lead, time taken to acquire the lead, effort taken to acquire the lead. What is it when compared to competition, and all of that. So in my mind, I think that's very critical.
now one of the things which you mentioned is Martech tools, right? Can you say how have these tools aged? Like, what have you seen the evolution to be, and which are your favorite tools out of these?
See, my exposure to tools only started when I joined Infosys, because Infosys had a very strong digital marketing team and they used to track everything. And I used to get my Google Analytics report, and that was the first time that somebody was sending me a report
Okay.
every week about the traffic, the what's happening with the page, and how are my emailers faring, and so on and so forth. And I, I'm not sure what they used to use, because that used to be run by a
Right.
specific function, and the reports used to be fairly detailed. What I have seen is, I think marketing teams have evolved from looking at just spreadsheets which were
Right.
sitting in people's desktops to actually having smart lists and actually look at integrating various forms of data. There are two
Sure.
sets of tools that I have used in my years of experience. One has been Eloqua in my Unisys days, because it was an Eloqua shop.
Okay.
And it had right from what we would use for account based marketing, to what we would use for our campaigns, to large deal support, to our website, to the pages that we had, to managing my customer slash prospect database. Everything used to be with Eloqua. And Eloqua used to be a lot harder to those days to actually go back and build out your HTML files, because it used
Okay.
to be, if there's a HTML code gone wrong, then your newsletter will suddenly look very weird. But if I go back and if I look at Marketo after that, I think Marketo has been fairly self-explanatory. It's more like your iPhone. You give somebody a system and they'll be able to figure their way
Right.
around. And in Marketo, ThoughtWorks is a total Marketo shop, and
Right.
we use Marketo for to drive a lot of the marketing automation, right? And by the time I joined, the maturity around us was fairly high in terms of we'd gotten over the initial glitches of implementing Marketo, because it was already 2 or 3 years since they'd already started implementing Marketo over many years.
Right.
And what I did get to see was people were looking at to segment and create smart lists, to look and see what they can do with from track the website, interesting moments from the website, because if you had one of your must grow logos coming to my site, then how did they go around with that whole
Right.
thing? I would get campaign reports right at the end of the campaign. I could go back, I could segment them, I could target them, I could create smarter lists from that. And then, of course, I can easily then go back and slice and dice my campaign based on the type of information that I want to share with my sales team and with my leadership team on the
Okay.
effectiveness of the, while
Campaign.
Spot is the other key tool that a lot of people use. I haven't used HubSpot extensively, and that's something that I plan to learn on using in Answer, because Answer is a HubSpot.
They use HubSpot in the day to day for
Yeah,
marketing.
yeah.
Awesome. So all these tools have fairly become simplified right now, right? Like earlier, it was way like everything was segmented, but I think now the all-in-one solution is coming out.
I, I think it's fairly integrated, and you get like great dashboards, and you
Right.
get to integrate different. So you get one source of truth. And the good thing is you've got enough bridges between system like Marketo to Salesforce, which is
Right.
going to be your CRM, for example, on the back
Perfect.
end. So
Right.
then you've got integrated sales and marketing. So what it means, if there is somebody who's been generated as your inbound, what does
Right.
it mean back, and how is that progress? So you actually go back to see the effectiveness of marketing across different channels. It could be content, it could be campaigns, it could be events, all through using systems like Marketo or Eloqua.
Right, right. See, actually, in HubSpot also you have got marketing, sales, and service all funnels coming in the same dashboard, which is great. In terms of all the career that you have spent, what is one campaign which you really admire, like which you have run and you really thought like you actually outdid yourself and you were surprised by the results and it showed you a very different side of marketing, like you did something great.
I don't think we've been as constrained as the time of COVID, right? Because it a lot of us, I won't say surprise, but of course it did a lot of reset, and it's not everything is the same past COVID. And
Right.
so in my mind, I think a lot of companies scrambled around to put together a campaign that helped during this COVID time,
Right.
and so did ThoughtWorks, because we said let's go back and let's work, but we said we won't go back and we won't talk about what we what we have done. Instead, we will rewrite the customer case studies in a first person voice, so that somebody knows what we've been able to do as, or what those organizations have been able to do. And
Okay.
that's what we did across a few key verticals that we've got great exposure back in India. And we also had an interesting infographic. And we
Okay.
also offered a free COVID consulting service. So if you are really wanting to go digital fairly quickly, then how can we do a free 50-hour workshop for you so that we can get started? The intent was to have a few CXO contacts and build your relationship. But
Right.
what was interesting is we had close to about 70 CXO contacts that we built, and we were also able to nurture about two conversations from there.
Nice.
And then we realized that we couldn't just stop at this wave, right? So we decided to write next wave was going to be a webinar. The webinar was going to be with Gojek, which is the leader in ride sharing and ride hailing, right, in Southeast of Asia. And they're a customer of ThoughtWorks. And we decided to do a platform or slash what does it mean to build resilience back into your systems. And that was basically the
Okay.
topic that we had, which was very appropriate. On the
Right.
back of that, we got one campaign that came to us. On the back of the microsite and a lot of the content that we'd created, an advisor called us and he asked us to come in for a fairly large bid that we got called for. And at the end of this, what we did do was on remote work, we brought out a very, very interesting ebook or a playbook on the best
Okay.
practices in remote work. And that's on the NASCOM site, and that's garnered more than 22,000 views. So I
Wow.
think it's about creating great content, creating content that can be a little different from your competition, and using different tactics. Don't just look at a campaign to be a single tactic. It can't be an event or a webinar, or it can't just be an email, or it just can't be one piece of hero content. You need to have multiple waves. You need to have 3 or 4 waves. You
Right.
need to have hero content as one of your waves. You need to have engagement as an online webinar or roundtable that you need to organize, and you need to be doing constant follow-ups, and that constant follow-ups need to happen from your automated database. So, and it
Right.
needs to be supported with social, both organic and inorganic, and then is when you will be able to succeed. And that's, I think, what we were able to do as true, thinking out of the box. Because for me, thinking out of the box is not about blue sky thinking, but thinking within constraints. And
Right.
what can you really be doing differently under constraints, because what your constraints are. And for me, that's what really mattered when we did this COVID campaign.
Awesome. And when you did this, what was the team size that executed this?
We're about 7 people who did this campaign together.
That's quite tight, right? It's not a very big team, but to
Yeah.
actually
But
get this
everyone is so you've got a mix of generalists and experts.
right.
So generalists take care of the larger program management. The experts take care of their personal pieces. So the marketing automation person takes care of their piece. The social person takes care of theirs. The program manager, who's like a generalist, takes care of the program. Then you've got somebody who's helping out with content because they're a content specialist. So you've got all of that going.
Nice.
And then you've got a designer on board as well.
Awesome. So it's like a mini agency which is working
Yeah.
internally. So that's awesome. What about one campaign, but a third person's campaign, which really stuck with you? Like in
Salesforce campaign a few years back, right?
okay,
Software is dead. I think that was a
right.
fairly bold move for any organization to come back and talk to you about it.
Hmm.
Because nobody really talks about what gives you your 100% of your business. They wanted to recreate a different piece of the market. It's about reimagining the space. It's about creating a niche for yourself and able to market into that. And I think they went fairly aggressively for the last couple of years around those lines. And it's been one of the most prominent B2B campaigns in my mind, pretty aggressive and
Right.
pretty bold. If I have to go back and if I have to see about how organizations have been able to do this. So for me, the Salesforce campaign has been always something that I remember.
Nice. In terms of you're one of the few people who has picked up a B2B campaign actually. Most of the times the answer which I get for this question is a B2C campaign. So I want to know your thought on B2C marketing versus B2B marketing.
I, I think a great way of seeing B2C marketing is any of your large CPG companies, right? Look at one of the cola wars,
Right,
or look at McDonald's. I think they've got, or Starbucks,
right,
they've got campaigns which are fairly unique year after year. And the cola wars are iconic, the way they show, like, and the same things get rehashed year after year, where it's a It's a Pepsi can, but with a red cape and made to look like Coke. Coke can with a blue cape and made to look like Pepsi. There are the car wars that happen all the time between BMW, Mercedes Benz, and Jaguar. A lot of them are fairly unique, but for me, I think any of these would make. But one annoying campaign, but got a lot of eyeballs was OU in my mind in India. I think
Okay.
that man used to be fairly annoying when he used to come on TV, and I think it's their founder who used to keep coming and talking.
You're
OYO.
talking about Make My Trip. Ibibo.
Go
Correct, correct,
Ibibo, not
correct,
OYO.
correct.
I had Go Ibibo in my head, yeah. So
Right,
it used to be fairly annoying, but I think after a point, I think the annoying part was what his USP was. So people would sit up to see, okay, what's the next stupid thing that he's going to say,
right,
and the brand would register, right? So for me, I think some of those are what you can get, even if things can backfire for you.
right. The interesting part about that campaign is it has the same script everywhere, right?
Yeah,
Like internationally, if we see any of their videos, it's the same script.
yeah.
But in India, the character became the standing point, and we all started talking. Like overnight, it came on our screens. It started irritating all of us, I think, together. But you're right, that became its USP.
Yeah.
And that guy has actually come on certain podcasts and YouTube videos, and like he, you were on this campaign. What do you feel about it? Like he actually did good for himself, which is
Yeah.
great.
I
So
think he's the co-founder, if I'm not mistaken, right?
I'm not sure if he's the co-founder, but yeah, might be. So in terms of
Chicago or Ibibo?
it's
I got it two out of the three wrong. Yeah, it's
no, no,
Chicago.
it's Trivago. It's
Yeah.
Trivago. Perfect. Now, when you see all these things happening, which are currently where marketing technology is also, what does the future hold for us?
I think it's going to be a lot more, marketing is going to be a lot more science driven or data driven, and it's
Right,
a lot more going to be insights. Nobody is, and especially post pandemic, nobody is going to have deep pockets to actually go and give you money unless and until you can justify ROI, marketing
right,
return. And it's going to be extremely critical because marketing roles are already part of board level conversations, right? They're
right,
one of the critical elements. Either you're looking to raise money, or if you're looking to go IPO, or you're looking to sell the organization, like in an
right,
acquisition,
right,
or like a sale, like an M&A case. So it's going to be a lot more science driven. So while there is going to be creativity on the content and engagement parts, I think large parts of how the campaign is going to be built is going to be built on science. It's
correct,
not going to be built on gut. While gut will tell you what message will fly, I think the science will tell you how it's fed. And I
right,
think it's going to be interesting for marketing people to wear both those hats, because you can't just be this creative person and say, I'll be creative, but your message doesn't hit the target audience at all. Then it doesn't make any sense. Or you say, I will just be this analytics person, then it means again you're going to be writing things which is not. I think you need to have a blend of both.
correct,
And great marketeers are going to be people who can wear both hats,
right,
think differently, think about campaigns differently, flip the same information in different ways, so that they're able to get the attention of your target audience, because there's a lot of noise out there. How do you
right,
cut through the noise and how do you get your message heard? I think that's going to be critical.
correct. Which brings me to a question, which is like, who are your most favorite marketers in the world? Like, who do you follow? Who do you look out for?
I look at Guy Kawasaki, of course.
Okay,
I mean,
okay,
he's somebody that I follow extensively. There have been a few people in my past who've helped me, like for example, Aditya Najja used to be heading, or he used to be the chief brand or story weaver for Infosys, and he's the one who's been around The World is Flat and the entire Thomas Friedman campaign that they
nice,
did. Then, of course, there is my ex boss, Purnima Menon, who's been a great mentor to me, and she's taught me a large part of the trade, which has helped me
awesome.
in getting better. So, in my mind, yeah, these are the people that I look at when I think about marketing.
Nice. You mentioned something ki the mix of creativity as well as science is going to be a right blend for a marketer. Now, there are some AI or machine learning platforms which are being built, which are actually generating blogs and content and all these things. What are your thoughts on those?
So my view is, if you're writing content, I think the systems have gotten to a point where they can be syndicating content based on what you fed them, right?
Right.
But I've had these multiple conversations, and I think if you're writing a book and if there's a chapter written by an AI tool, and I
Right.
think whom I used to work with closely, his name is Jaspreet, and in fact, he did that in his last book, Jaspreet Brindra.
Okay.
And I found that that chapter doesn't resonate or isn't as well written as the rest of the chapters written by humans. And I
Okay.
think that's because predominantly it loses that human touch that we look for, right? So
Right.
while your campaigns can be broad, messages can be created, or your first level of support can happen from a bot or from your system, but can you truly give them to create all of your campaign messages, take you to market? I think we still have time to go, and it
Correct.
also means that marketing's copywriters, people who are creative, people who've got like a great sense of writing catchy copy will always find roles. So it's not like their roles are going to go away just because we now have a system and the system is going to be churning out copy instead of them. I don't think that's the case.
Okay. One question which I want to ask is, what is the one question which I am not asking you, which you want to really answer?
Ah, that's a tricky one that you quickly. I think it's about talking through, and it's something that I get asked very often, and it's a question that I see has different views,
Okay.
like being a woman and then leadership roles. How does
Okay.
that work? And how do you then manage teams? And is that hard? Is that easy?
I would
In
never ask that question,
Thank you.
primarily
Yeah.
because I do not see the difference. But okay, you can let us know about it.
When we go back and when we see the industry, right, it does get a little, even in marketing, you will see a large number of men in that
Okay.
table when compared to the women. I think it's up to the organization and it's up to the team
Right.
and mandate from the leader in the team to ensure that the women in your team who are working in the team also get a chance to talk, also get a
Perfect.
chance to express their views, also
Right.
get a chance to come forward with their ideas, lead certain roles when it's required. Many times, if you're in a room which is about 10 men and one woman, you do tend to get overwhelmed because you've got like more men in the room than women.
Right.
And if you've got a culture like this, which is underlying, then it becomes a lot more easier in your stand ups, in your meetings, in when you're leading teams.
Right.
Second is, we do it, it is a little hard for us because we work, you have to balance many roles to actually get to where you have to. And it gets, and if somebody says it's been easy, I'll say no, it's been twice as hard, because
Definitely.
you want to be, women generally tend to be a lot more perfectionist. I'm not saying the men aren't, but I've seen that trait to be a lot strong in women. And then it just gets more hard for her because she does not want to do the 30% out and build on the 70%, right? Because she wants to get the 80%. But more times than not, you don't get the 80%. The other thing is also about wanting to be flexible, wanting to be adaptable, because nobody foresaw the entire pandemic. It's
Correct.
about how can you be a lot more flexible, flexible in the way you think, flexible in the way you work with people. How do you ensure that the team's contributing their 100%? They're all working remotely, they all have strained, or they're all being overwhelmed online, right? Whereas you would
Right.
get to see them in your office otherwise. So in my mind, I think a lot of these years have actually taught me a few things. One is, of course, giving it all your 100%. Two is see big picture. And I think that's very critical, because if you don't see the big picture, then you will never be able to do and grow in your role, because you'll then only be doing now and
Right.
present. Three, I think you should be updated with what's happening around the market around you, what you've planned in terms of what is it that your competition is doing, what is it that some of the influencers are saying. So when you go into your meetings, you're a lot more informed with stats. You're a lot more informed with what your leadership, and you could also be like somebody who's going back and educating a lot of the other people around you in that meeting. The fourth is always undercommit and over deliver, because I
Perfect.
think that always helps, because people will be pleasantly surprised, and that's something. And give it your 100%. The campaign works, the campaign fails, at least when you go to sleep that night, you've done everything that you could for that campaign, and that campaign has worked,
Right.
or it hasn't worked, so it doesn't matter. So in my mind, these have been like my guiding principles. And never be that postman taking some stuff from your team A and going and giving it to your boss, and taking some stuff as feedback from your boss and taking it back to the team. If you
Right.
don't value add in the middle, please create that
Direct
communication
channel.
channel open between your team members and your leadership team. Because if you're just going to be that postman, nobody appreciates it at the end of the day. And you're not
Awesome.
adding value. That's not
Awesome.
what you're there for. So those are like my things that have worked for me.
That's actually a very, I think, detailed and great advice. Like, so I have a couple of things which I want to add. One is, I don't know, I don't personally think of women as not being able to do all these things, but to come to think of it on this particular show also, right? Dude, where's my ROI? You're the first woman who we are talking to right now, and this is like the like when you were saying this, I'm thinking, okay, let me think. And you are the first woman to be here as a marketer, and wherein I'm talking to you, making this conversation. Second is during this whole pandemic situation, right? It is actually countries that had women in leadership position, like New Zealand, Taiwan, that recovered like instantly. If you see the cases of COVID which happened, it didn't even, there was no lockdown, no nothing over there, which is crazy. And I believe personally, women, they're a lot more focused on getting the right results, whereas men are only about action, action, action. But result, so men will just go for it, and women will plan and then go for it, which is great. Obviously, not to discount the fact that men and women both have masculine and feminine energy, so it's not a war. And the subliminal marketing campaign which is running through our entire, you can say, universe is actually patriarchy, which is crazy. And i I don't know, what are your thoughts on that, like?
I think that's like too much to debate, and we just have like about 7 minutes to complete because we
Okay.
can talk till the cows come home about that subject. Yeah, once we
Okay.
start talking about it. Yeah.
No worries, no worries. So I think this was the question which I didn't ask, but you answered. It was really, I think that stands out for me actually. One particular question which is asking is, how do you control CPL? So I don't know. It's a
Cost,
very
what you're
cost per lead. Yeah.
asking me? Yeah. So it's about being a lot more clear about what you want to be looking as for lead, right? Who your target audience are and how can you be tailored. So I think if you've got the right, so if you go back and if you do a little research, say you're working to have certain CIOs say in that campaign, for example, then you need to have content that's tailored to the CIO. Say you're looking at the CFO or the CPO, the Chief Procurement Officer, you can't take the same technology messaging and take it out to them. Then your cost per lead is going to be extremely high because it won't work, right? The messaging doesn't resonate. Second is, of course, how do you tailor down and how do you ensure that you've got like a very structured, scientific way in which you are going to be segmenting the people that you want to target through your paid promotions. And if I'm talking about LinkedIn, for example, you don't keep it very wide, you keep it fairly narrow, but you don't keep it so narrow that you can't really do the campaign, right? Because LinkedIn needs a certain number of people to be actually actively doing a campaign. But you look at different segments and different industries, and then you look at who could be complementary people who can be associated with that one specific target persona that you have in mind. So it's going to be on your messages, it's going to be on the way your post looks, it's going to be on how you segment, and it's going to be on what is your follow up, and it's going to be on what's your call to action. These are the 5 things that I look at when I go back and I track my cost per lead.
Awesome. One other question, I think this has already been answered. The tracking platforms, basically the marketing automation platforms, which Smita mentioned, were Marketo and Eloqua, right?
Yeah, yeah. And the other, of course, is HubSpot. If you want to
HubSpot.
be, I don't have too much experience in HubSpot, but that's the other thing that everyone says is fairly easy, and I'm looking forward to learn.
It's very easy. It comes with a free CRM, so which
Yeah.
is great to start off, and free chatbot also. Okay, can you give us two, three books which you really would recommend on this show for people to read upon market?
I usually read fiction. I read no, but there was a book that just give me a minute. It was all about how do you tell stories, right? And that worked well. I normally read a lot of science sci-fi fiction. I read a lot of fiction on which is on mystery and on Egypt and all of that. I don't read any of the and marketing and all that, because it's a little too much for me. It's not me usually. So there are two books that I have read in the past. One is, of course, Driving Digital Strategy. It's pretty good. The other one is Donald Miller's Building a Story Brand, and I think I would recommend most people who are in the business of building stories and weaving stories, they should be looking at it. It's got a lot of practical examples of how do you build a compelling story if you're looking to build a compelling story. And the third is, of course, Power of Habit. Like, what do you constantly do,
Right.
that by Charles Duhigg, that you can build as a new habit. So these are the three books that I have read in the past, and I think it's fairly interesting.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Smita, for this time. It's really been precious. And what I am personally going to do is get a lot more women on the show for sure, because we've been hunting for marketers, but in our search, it's men who are popping. We need to change that. So we will specifically get more women. That's a promise. And thanks a lot for your time. Hope you enjoyed the session. See
I've had fun talking to you, and I think it's been like a great time speaking with folks as well. Happy to answer that question offline. I can do a quick video and send that back to you. And thanks for having me here, and look forward to speaking to all of you all in the near future. See ya.
Thanks
Thank
a
you.
lot, Smita.
Yeah.
And guys, next time again, we'll be talking to the head of marketing at Swiggy, Krishna. So I would love for you guys to join us at that point, and we'll take this forward, asking the same question again, dude, where's my ROI? Thanks a lot. Bye bye.